Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the third session in this series, also known as the third deck off the ship. On Tuesday, we did an overview of commercial banking, and the response from the surveys was extremely positive. Today, we're going to discuss wealth management, that side of the business. And I think for context, it might be worth pointing out that there was a time when banking, investments, and insurance were all separate and segregated.
All opinions and views expressed by the speakers are not representative of views and opinions of RBC Dominion Securities, Inc. All information and opinions provided in this video are in good faith, but without legal responsibility.
Typical banking and investment firms offered investment vehicles, and insurance companies gave out policies. When the Bank Act changed, it allowed banks to then get into that business, and some acquired investment firms and brought it in-house, while others sort of built it from scratch. So that's going to explain why today you will see us refer to certain departments, such as RBC Dominion Securities or RBC PH&N, Phillips, Hager, and North. These are independent investment firms that were acquired and sort of brought into the Royal Bank. So hopefully that sort of helps as we go through. In terms of the agenda, we will sort of start off with, at some point, with a poll just to get a temperature check of those attending, and that will help the presenters as they're going through their piece. Robert's going to start off with his era, which is PH&N. Then we'll have Heather from Private Banking, Endrita from Royal Trust, and then I'll do the final piece to touch on RBC Dominion Securities and just sort of connect the dots. And then we'll open up for Q&A. With this being sort of around the lunch hour, we really try to keep it tight so that we end before 1 or right at 1, knowing that everyone is sort of on their lunch break. If you are joining for the first time, my name is Orlando Lopez. I am an investment advisor and financial planner with RBC Dominion Securities. Been in the industry for a number of years, and as I use that sort of ship analogy, I was on a different ship at one point, and now with the RBC ship. It is a passion of mine just to share what I learned in the industry, in the space around finance. And this is one of the ways that I tend to do that with these webinars that I've hosted. And the panelists, so we're fortunate to have the individuals taking time out of their busy day from different parts of RBC, and they'll get an opportunity to let them introduce themselves, talk about their career journey, what sort of they did prior to entering that part of the organization, or if they were with different industry or different firm, which sort of always kind of gives you a bit of context in terms of the experience that's brought to the table. And this is one of the slides that I've been sort of sharing. So now we're on deck 3. So initially, the first 2 we sort of looked at personal and commercial banking. Now we're going to move on to the wealth management side of the organization. And I wanted to share another thing that I think will be helpful. So if you were to go to the RBC website, the external website, this is sort of what you would typically see. And I'm circling wealth. So we did the personal side initially, then we looked at business and commercial on Tuesday. And now in terms of the wealth area, if you were to sort of go to that external side, click on the wealth section, then what you would see is it brings you to this other page. And I've sort of highlighted the different businesses that fall under the wealth section. So we've got representation from all of those today. So we've got, PH&N, Royal Trust, Private Banking, and Dominion Securities. Time to now kind of get a sense from those of you joining. So if you've got your phones, you can scan that QR code. We'll just do a quick poll, or you can go to slido.com and enter 2501745. I'm going to pull up on another screen as well, so you can kind of see. So just enter that, and when they can. A little bit of tech delay, so my apologies for that one. Okay, there we go. Okay, so this is our first question. Which of the following webinars in this series have you attended? So if you, and you can choose more than one from this. So if you've been to both of the personal banking and commercial, or just one of them, or this is the first time that you're attending one. Give a little bit more time. That's someone who's been to the personal banking, which was the first one that we started off with. Nobody, we don't have any repeat from commercial banking, so more so personal, and then the rest joining for the first time. Okay, good. And the other question, have you had experience working with a wealth management arm of a bank or a wealth management firm? Really interesting. Okay, so majority, yes. All right. Always interesting. Okay, so I will now introduce Robert. This is sort of some of the questions we'll sort of go through, and I'll pull it down quickly. But Robert and I actually have known each other prior to RBC, but I'll let him go into his career journey, you know, how sort of ended up in this part of the bank. So Robert, you're up. Well, talk about, yeah, your career journey, my friend.
Perfect. Thank you, Orlando. And again, thank you for inviting me. These sessions, we were just talking about it, how great they are for, you know, people that even work at the bank. So a lot of kind of departments that you don't really get to hear as in depth as you're kind of going through. So kudos for setting this all up. Yeah, so as Orlando said, I'm an investment counselor at RBC PH&N Investment Council, which is one of the arms of RBC Wealth Management. So you know, Orlando being at the other arm, Dominion Securities. You know, but I guess just I'll start by telling you a little bit of history of myself. So I started, I'm sure as many of you guys, as a teller. Now maybe 17 years ago at TD, you know, just fresh out of university. Everyone's, you know, you think I'm going to be a teller. It's going to be a great job and a great start. But, you know, I guess it has been a pretty long career in the bank. But, yeah, and then for years I moved through the bank as an advisor, business, commercial banking, you know, did a little bit of management as well. And then about 8-9 years ago, I decided to move into wealth, and it was at TD as well, but similar arm, so the Private Investment Council at TD, and actually that's where Orlando and I met. So I guess it's been about 8 years now. So you know, I guess time flies. Yeah, so it's very similar type to RBC at PH&N. But about 4 years ago, I decided to move from private counsel at TD to RBC Private Counsel. One of the big things is, as you can obviously see from speaking to all these guests, is the partnership at RBC is just from what I observed, just far ahead of what TD kind of offered. So our clients get this great partnership, and they get access to every part of the bank, and we know more about each other's, a lot more collaboration. So moved from TD to RBC, and some clients as well, and most clients kind of also haven't looked back and kind of appreciated the move as well. So kind of I guess why did I even choose counsel as where I wanted to work in? Because as you obviously, everyone else, if you're watching the other videos and speaking to Orlando, there's other arms of wealth management that a career path can kind of go down. But for me, and how I I guess deal with clients, I found that the counsel model is just something that kind of I guess speaks to me of how I kind of manage my client relationships. One of the things, I guess I'll kind of go and speak to what does PH&N do, and then, what kind of clients we're looking for. So, while we can invest in any stocks, bonds, alternative investments, any of that stuff for clients, we have more of a firm-based approach to choosing those investments. So, where we have an investment committee with a chief investment strategist that will kind of do very thorough analysis and research on any of the investment products that I have access to or my clients have access to. So I'm relying on them to do the deep dive and that risk analysis on any investments or strategies that a client will have access to. They're doing that deep dive first, because one of the most important things here and for most of our clients is, adding value but controlling risk. So most of our clients are professionals.
Yeah, that's a good one, Robert. Yeah, what's a typical client? Because you mentioned what will be a typical client.
So a typical client is, we have a lot of business owners, current or past business owners. So a lot of clients, maybe they're selling their business and now they need help, professional management. For myself, honestly, I have a lot of professionals, a lot of medical professionals, doctors, some lawyers. Essentially it's people that are busy that don't want to do the day-to-day management of investments, but they also have need for additional wealth management, strategies, more help with the planning part of it as well. So in addition to the investment management, and I always say that's table stakes, the investment management part about it. We do that, and I think we do that really well. We're also, really do a big deep dive with our clients. We have the ability to really get a deep understanding of their goals and build a plan to kind of suit those goals. So, that's kind of what I guess a typical client looks like.
Yeah. And then just the other question, I'll say, anything comes to mind where through the collaboration there was a problem that you were able to solve for by collaborating? That comes to mind for you?
Yes. So I kind of always go back to one client. It's kind of one of those perfect textbook collaboration. Everything kind of worked out smoothly after the fact. But it was a client of mine. So he's a doctor, so super busy with obviously managing a practice, and has had really good income. However, lacked any planning. Wasn't really thinking of even retirement, even though he's mid-50s. So sat with him and his wife to build a financial plan, learning a little bit more about him. He's a U.S. citizen, so that was extra. There's a little bit more planning that had to be involved there, and he didn't know about any of that. As a U.S. citizen, there's kind of some additional planning that you have to do, and let's just say TFSA, for example, add some kind of a layer of complexity, right? So, and in addition, actually speaking to collaboration. We did a will review, and we found out that his executor was a sister who lived in the States. So that was another one. He had no insurance or any plan for his families for any type of emergency. So, minimal savings, high income earner, and kind of just at this point, just worked, try to save whatever he can, and kind of spend the rest basically. But been a client for a few years now, and kind of big turnaround, good savings plan in place. To hope, and he's on track to retire by 65, but most doctors don't want to retire ever, basically, always tell me. So he could retire at 65, and then with the help of our will estate consultant, kind of help them rebuild a will, put some insurance strategies in place, and actually just even recently worked with private banking to help him get a mortgage. They bought a new place, and he needed some collateral against his portfolio. So it was a lot of collaboration to get to kind of his goals or his family's goals, and it went from kind of he kind of did it himself. He thought, okay, I could do it myself, but really there were so many things that he didn't think of that would have cost him maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars, or lost out on other things, that now he's kind of has that peace of mind knowing that, okay, his family's safe, and then he has that retirement or estate strategy in place. So it's really kind of going back to giving clients that peace of mind, and knowing that you have a professional that's there to help you. And the other thing, actually, so at PHN, probably people don't realize is, the way we're licensed a little bit different than most other people in the bank is, we're fiduciaries, meaning we actually have to act in the client's best interest. So the clients have that peace of mind knowing that I have to, do for them whatever I would do if I was in their shoes, and that's per my licensing. So it's a little bit different. Most places in the banks don't actually have a fiduciary responsibility. So it's more like an accountant or a lawyer kind of thing. So like I said, that's kind of that one there always comes to mind. Like I said, it's very textbook.
It was a turnaround.
To organize. So that would always pop in.
And then you touched on private banking and also will and estate. So probably then good that we'll get Heather to talk about private banking. And probably, Heather, your journey towards private banking. Will be a good place to start. And thanks, Robert.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Orlando. So I don't know, I would say I grew up in the organization. I've been with RBC now for 26 years. Very exciting moment, celebrating my 25th year last year. It was a special event for me, but it really was my first job. A lot like Robert here, I started off as a teller. I actually was in high school. I love to tell this story because it speaks to how technology has changed over the years. But I didn't have I don't know about you guys, but I didn't have a cell phone until I was in university. And so when I was in high school, I was in the part-time pool, and they would call me the day of to work. And the only way that they could contact me was to call the front office of the school, and then they'd go over the speakers and then call me into the office to go work that afternoon because I didn't have any classes in the afternoon. That's when we had OAC. So anyhow, lots of fun, lots of memories over the years working for RBC. It was great. Like I worked in the branches throughout university. I have a commerce and finance degree from Rotman, University of Toronto. And, I worked 6 days a week during my summers, and I worked every Saturday. And, it was great. It paid for my schooling, it paid for my car, and gave me a little bit of savings. When I graduated, I continued with RBC in the branch environment. I had 2 maternity leaves. I have 3 lovely boys, and so you can see I have twins. But, it really kind of gave me a self of reflection in terms of what I really enjoyed. And I love working with business owners. And, we've talked about commercial banking in the past, but I actually was a commercial banker. I loved working with business owners, having that background, having a commerce and finance degree, really understanding businesses, what's important to them, purchase and sale, buying commercial real estate, equipment, leasehold purchases. It was a wonderful time in my life in that role, and I did that for 6 years prior to coming into private banking. So that was my last role, and I did healthcare. So I specialized with doctors and dentists, working with them, but they're a very interesting type of clientele. And I learned a lot about cash flow and understanding cash flow and financing against cash flow, and also commercial real estate. That's a little bit about me.
Wonderful. And then, is there anything that stood out for you, or a situation that you were able to sort of solve for? The client had a pain point or a problem that kind of stood out, and the resource that private banking sort of played a role in solving for that need.
Yeah, so I have been in private banking for 5 years now. So, you see a lot over the years and figuring things out. But one thing I do want to make clear about private banking is right, one for business owners, right, having had that background. It's also right for professionals or executives. And so what I want to say here is busy people with complex structures need help, right? So if you're able to manage everything yourself, you may not need our services, but if you have a level of complexity, and so we are sometimes it's because people have wires. We're the only part of the bank that can do wires through email and telephone instruction for our clients. Or we can transfer money between an account that's in private banking to an account at RBC that's not in private banking. And sometimes those limitations through bank cards matter, right? So that's a very simple level that we're assisting in solving clients' problems. We also have different structures, and I would say we're kind of a little bit of the entire bank. So we're part personal, part commercial, part wealth management, which makes my job really, really interesting in terms of solving for clients' issues. And one of that is in our credit structures. So we're the only part of the bank that can use corporate investments held by Robert or Orlando as security to provide a personal line of credit. And this is just one example that private banking is unique in terms of credit structures out there in the industry and in terms of banks. And so when we look at solving for issues, we had a client who, and I wouldn't say maybe solving so much as a restructuring to make things more tax efficient. The client was investing in private mortgages through a holding company. Instead of doing that, the investment advisor wanted to diversify their holdings. So they actually cashed out those private mortgages through the holding company and set up a non-registered investment company, right? Non-registered investment portfolio. We then went and used their home, which was free and clear, as security. We provided a line of credit, and the client was able to segment that and then invest through private mortgages through the personal side. So why do that? Interest income and leverage strategy. You want to speak to your accountant, but it's a very efficient way of creating a leverage. And in a corporation, there's more tax efficiency because you can now use dividends and capital gains, which are much more tax efficient than interest income, right? Interest income in a corporation is taxed at the highest tax rate, so not efficient at all, right? So working together, we did solve for that. Sometimes we are taking that corporate investment portfolio as security, kind of like what I mentioned before in that initial example. And it's just because clients want to continue to invest on the corporate side, but want access to funds for a goal on the personal side. So it could be to invest in those private mortgages. It could be for renovations, put a down payment on a property, right? Help your kids out, who knows, right? So we have those sort of structures to help solve for clients' issues. But when we look at private banking, it's really from that banking and credit perspective, and it's rounded off with the wealth management, so Orlando and Robert, in terms of investment insurance management. And where we come together is really on that planning and structuring, as I've given like a couple of examples, to make sure that we're structuring everything to, one, maximize your credit facilities, but also to minimize your tax liability. Right?
Yeah. So you're simplifying the complicated, again, which might be difficult for them to do if they're very busy. They have a lot of moving parts, and it requires not only collaboration internally, but externally, like with the accountant as well. So a lot of collaboration. So, and then in terms of, again, for these individuals and for everyone, they may also need to figure out, how do I be how do I maintain tax efficiency now and also going to the next generation. So that is sort of where leveraging Royal Trust. And I think, I want Endrita to not feel isolated. You're not the only one that did not start as a teller. Actually, yesterday, it's not 2 days ago, Margaret, she started in film, from the film industry, and then came into banking. So that's so you can probably share with everyone how you got started and how did you end up here. Yeah.
I guess, it's good to have someone who comes from a little bit of a different path to RBC, but I'm, so impressed with, starting as a teller and just making your way up. So fantastic stories, Robert and Heather. Thank you for sharing more about yourself. And Orlando, thank you for having me on today. So my name is Endrita Isaj. I am a will and estate advisor at Royal Trust. I am a lawyer by profession. And in this role, I work with clients to let them know about Royal Trust's estate, power of attorney, and trust services and how they can fit into clients' estate plans. So as I mentioned, with my background and my profession, when clients do decide to go ahead and include a Royal Trust in their wills or powers of attorney, I'm able to have those discussions with them of who, the best choice of executor would be, and choice of power of attorney. And when those draft documents come in, I review them. I ensure it's in line with what we discussed and that administratively the client's wishes could be carried out as per the will. So how Royal Trust can help is to either be appointed as an executor in your will. So these are our corporate executor services. We can be a sole executor, or we can act as a co-executor with a family member, a trusted friend. So we're able to do those roles in those two capacities. We can also assist your executor in discharging their duties. So this is what we call our agent for executor services. Your chosen executor remains as the executor and all the decision making that comes with it, but then they're able to delegate as much of the administration of the estate settlement that they require help with to Royal Trust. As I mentioned, we can also be appointed as an attorney for property. So as you may know, there are two types of powers of attorney. The first is your power of attorney for property. So this appoints an individual or a trust company like Royal Trust to make decisions about your property, your finances, your assets, your investments on your behalf. And it can continue while you become incapable of making these decisions. A power of attorney for personal care similarly appoints an individual to make personal care and health decisions about you. Of course, due to the personal nature of this, Royal Trust is not able to act as an attorney for personal care, but we are able to act as an attorney for property. So what that entails is we step into the incapable person's shoes. That means paying bills, taxes are filed, ensuring that everything that investments are looked after, property, if it's there, it's also looked after, there's insurance. We're taking care to ensure the value of their assets remains. In a similar way that we act as an agent for executor, we can act as an agent if you've chosen a family member or a friend who is acting as your attorney for property in discharging their duties. So again, all of the administrative work that comes with acting as an attorney for property, Royal Trust can step in to assist. So I guess a little bit about my journey of what brought me to Royal Trust. So before I joined RBC Royal Trust, I worked in estate litigation. So we saw what could go wrong during the estate administration process, disgruntled beneficiaries, poor will drafting, and how it could lead to ambiguities in the will, and you'd have to go through the courts, which is time consuming and expensive. So the reason why I wanted to move to Royal Trust is because I love this area of trusts and estates, but I also wanted to help clients protect their legacy and ensure their assets are distributed in the way that they intended. I also want to help them provide that peace of mind. Let's say their choice of executor may not align with currently who they have in mind, and that's where we're able to step in. You have a professional like Royal Trust who can handle all aspects of the estate administration. And I guess to give some examples of where these conversations come up, and Robert, I think you had a really great example of, your choice of executor. Let's say they live in the United States. Maybe clients know this, maybe they don't, but having, a foreign executor, like one who lives in the US, not only is it difficult administratively to administer an estate from abroad, but it could also attract negative tax consequences for your estate. So as soon as we see a flag like that, where a child is perhaps living in the United States or a family member, and they're being considered as an executor, that's when royal trust can be brought in. We can act as a co-executor, and because the management of the estate settlement occurs in Ontario, there's ways to work around the issues that come with having a foreign executor. Another one is perhaps if you have a blended family and you want to ensure that the family harmony remains and there's no conflict, and especially when a very difficult time, an individual passes away, a lot of emotions come up. So to ensure that family harmony, having a neutral third-party executor like Royal Trust can really provide that peace of mind.
That's good. Actually, and here's what I'm going to share to show all these different entities. And again, because the whole point of these is to help individuals better understand how where there's the overlap and how things sort of complement each other. Any one of us on this panel right here can leverage internal accountants that are salaried at RBC that are part of what we refer to as the family office. We can have them join in a meeting that requires that level of expertise on the tax side, on the accounting side, that we may be aware of on a high level, but they're able to go in a little bit more deeper. So the way that technically, they don't have, we're the ones that are their clients. They sort of support advisors across the country. And the different teams that are there when we need a CPA or a CA, professional, or we might also need that lawyer to come in, review the will, and give sort of a second opinion on it. So that's something that everyone within RBC Wealth, including everybody on this panel, we're able to bring in those individuals from what we refer to as sort of that family office service. So key thing as well, a lot of times there is a bit of a equating of two words, equating of investments and wealth. And individuals might think, well, I don't need, I do my investing on my own, so I don't really need any help. But the reality is that investments are part of the sort of slice of the pie in terms of one's wealth, but there's many other areas which we support with, and we always encourage individuals to not overlook. So over and above investments. So yes, we do help clients with investments. We have the capability, we have the resources, but as you can see, there's many other facets or other areas that we also incorporate along with helping with investments. So on a very high level, that part of the RBC ship is very stacked. There is a wide array of professionals that are experienced within the industry and also experienced from outside the industry, just as like Endrita, who's a lawyer, right? So, in a funny but not so funny way, her role is to sort of reduce how many individuals will become clients of the litigation firm she probably worked for. So if she can reduce how many conflict there will be in terms of an estate, right? By being more proactive, by helping clients, avoid certain mistakes that, others have made in the past that they might not be, they might not be aware of, or it might be in their blind spot. So certainly, hope this sort of helps to sort of shed a little bit more light on that area of RBC, which this is the third sort of area. So we did personal, we did business, and now sort of wealth, which, you know, there's overlap because one, you know, to manage that wealth, there are times where there's need for day-to-day banking, there's need for, you know, borrowing for a home purchase or expanding the business. You know, so even though they might be segmented for efficiency and for just management purposes, the structure allows for a lot of overlap because we all know that an individual doesn't fit into one bucket. It's their life that we're trying to help them to manage, and they go through stages. So hopefully that sort of helps. And again, in terms of the resources, advisors like myself at RBC Domain Securities or Robert, the vehicles are on the shelf is a lot wider than what would be traditionally at the retail side of the bank. And if you remember that I mentioned the history, these entities were at some point independent firms that were brought into RBC or that were acquired. So that part, that sort of independence is sort of somewhat maintained, but then we get the full strength of the bank to support clients. So I'm going to open up and sort of want any questions. I just need to kind of keep an eye, see if there's any hands that were raised. So you can, raise your hand if you've got any questions, whether you are you know, new to RBC, existing RBC client, or work at RBC, but in just one department. Feel free, any question that you might have. And I'm going to check the chat as well, because that's another area. And while I'm doing that, here, this is the remainder of the sessions that will be coming up. So the next area we're going to touch on, I label that investment. So that's going to be touching on the direct investing area, sort of more, which doesn't come with any wealth management support. And then we'll touch on also insurance and then wrap it up with what we'll refer to as beyond banking. So that might be a term that might not be familiar with everyone, but there is an element where RBC as an organization has sort of differentiated themselves, especially on the technology side. There's a bit of a race, somewhat of a race where, you know, financial institutions or banks are quickly becoming tech companies before tech companies become banks. And I think RBC, I've seen really embrace technology over and above just the tools that are used, but, you know, collaborating with startups and with fintech companies. That's been something that's been really interesting for me to sort of see and observe, which I think will be eye-opening for a lot of people to sort of see, you know, what are the sort of tools that are available for clients over and above just online banking and e-transfers. Those are some of the things that, you know, I found them interesting when I sort of came across them and discovered them myself. The other thing that I'll certainly ask everyone to sort of do as well is, you know, if you join, feel free to, you know, share this information, let anybody else know the other series that we've got coming up. If you found this beneficial, if you found some sort of new information that you've learned by attending today or in the past sort of webinar, it will be recorded. That way, you know, if anybody that you think would benefit, you can kind of send it their way. So with that, I'm going to ask if anyone has any sort of final things that you want to share. So Robert, Heather, or Endrita, any final thing that you want to sort of share, just based on, and again, you know, the different experiences, because everybody's gone through stages in their career, from teller, you know, at high school, getting the phone call, different firm, you know, Robert and myself coming from, you know, both from TD, so we've seen the differences on different industry. So any final thing that you want to say in terms of just what sort of, been probably impressed you the most in terms of the strength of RBC and why so many clients choose RBC? Open floor.
I'll just say,
Start there, Orlando, if you want.
go ahead.
Yeah.
So after being at the bank so long, like I can't speak to other financial institutions, but I feel that RBC has always taken care of me as an employee throughout, moving, throughout having children. I took a really, really long time to figure out what I wanted to do, but I think private banking was such a good fit for me because it builds on my personal and commercial background, and it really allows me to focus on those planning and the structuring for clients that I'm really passionate about. And so I thank RBC for that. And I will tell you, anybody out there who's also thinking about their career, get out there and do different things and figure out what you like and what you don't like, right? Because sometimes it's doing the job that you don't like that allows you to focus on what you do like. And I was having this conversation with a new employee to commercial banking yesterday, and I think all of us have had that moment. And for me, it really was coming back from my maternity leave in terms of saying, okay, this path in my career is not working, but let me pivot and let me reassess what I really like doing. And at the time I had been going in the management route, and I realized it wasn't the right route for me. And I was more suited to working with business owners and in the client-facing role. And so it was a pivotal moment where I took a lateral role, which kind of got me to where I am today. And this is going 10 plus years ago that really drew me to this point that I'm in today. And I think everybody in this room and everybody who's listening can say the same thing, or maybe you haven't had that moment yet, but I bet you will. So that's my lasting moment.
Thank you. And Robert.
Yeah, no, firstly, yeah, Heather, it's funny, the very similar story that I have. Actually, I learned that I think we went to university together, that I probably, maybe I met you 20-something years ago as well. So that's kind of funny. But yeah, similar story, but one thing to say, and again, I already said it, but kudos to Orlando. I could tell you at TD, and again, being in the industry for so long, I can't imagine that the other banks would have something this collaborative where we're all working together just to make sure that the client's needs are met from every aspect and every arm of the bank. So again, kudos to Orlando here, because it's and again, just speaks volumes to how RBC, how collaborative, and everyone works together so well, just to make sure that the client is put first. So yeah, again, great series, and I'm sure whoever's watching and watching any of them will find these super beneficial. So.
Exactly. And to add to that as well, being, newer to the bank, I think what really stands out from other financial institutions is this ability to partner. I have worked with, a few of you on this call already, and it just really goes to speak to the partnership that it exists, and the fact that the client first experience, you have this at your, fingertips. You can bring in different areas of wealth management and other areas of RBC. So thank you, Orlando. I think you have done a fantastic job of highlighting this, and it really is a testament to the One RBC.
Yeah. And I'll close off by saying, maybe just to help paint the picture for individuals, again, I've just been using that whole ship analogy. But imagine the difference is that there is really an open door that allows for individuals to move between the different decks and to grab that colleague from deck 3 to come down to deck number 1 to help with that sort of pain point. And it's constantly happening, as opposed to a rigid sort of, wait a minute, no, your station, you got to stay at your station, they stay at their station, and sort of that rigidity is not there. And that is part of the fluid culture that is allowed. So anyone at any point can pick up a phone or send a message to any colleague, and then we've been really taking advantage of technology to jump on calls with clients and put all our heads at the table. So that's something that I would say stands out if I were to, again, go back to that whole analogy. The segmentation is there. It helps one management and reporting. There's got to be some sort of structure. Structures help, but the walls are not sort of concrete walls that individuals like us can't move and bring each other to different rooms, to different meeting rooms to help clients. So that's been one of the things that I've continued to learn more and more as I deal with, as I solve problems, right? I got one this week. For the first time, I helped a client purchase an Australian bond because we needed to sort of not something you do every day, but you figure out, okay, where can I get that support? Easily you find that. And another thing I'll just probably mention, even before this call, Endrita and I are messaging, we're going to collaborate on a call coming next week to help a client. So that's something that really has been pleasant. And for anybody on the call as a client or anybody who is internal, we've got some new people that joined the organization. We have new clients and new employees that joined recently, so we welcome them. Hopefully they'll see the same thing. So with that, I will sort of say we'll bid farewell to everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your Thursday. A good weekend. I don't know what the forecast is. Hopefully it's nice and warm and sunny. And you know where to find us. Feel free to reach out at any point. And there will be a survey that comes after. Those help us to sort of, continue to refine what we're doing. So thank you very much again, Robert, Heather, and Endrita. Appreciate you taking the time on your busy day.
And
Such a pleasure. Thank you, Orlando.
All right. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.